settlement timing, including real-time settlement. That's going to be more and more a subject, and it was a subject when we talked in February. And tap to pay on a standard mobile phone, which we again talked about in February. On that note, I'd like to switch to the panelists and have them introduce themselves. So, Mike, would you start? We'll go from Mike to Mike, and then Manish and Gautam. So, Mike, do you want to kick it off?
Which one?
There we go.
Mike Siegel, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I'm Mike Siegel, and I'm CEO of 20022 Labs, which is a not-for-profit association focused on driving demand for data-rich payments. Amongst other things, we publish a weekly news digest called Tracking Payments, designed to help folks in the traditional areas of banking and payments keep up with trends in data-rich payments and embedded finance and modernization of the CFO stack. I usually find it helpful to give a little bit of my background so you understand my bias. I am not a payments guy, nor a banker, nor a technologist. I'm a multiple-time entrepreneur that got dragged into payments in 2010 when I was asked to help Swift set up a program designed to create bridges between their member institutions, fintech startups, and traditional tech vendors. I went from there to being a venture capitalist, investing in fintech and paytech. And I've done over 100 investments globally in those kinds of companies. And I also spend a fair amount of time advising banks and insurers and payment networks on innovation strategy. My perspective overall on innovation in payments starts from the idea that dealing with payments is something that everyone around the world must do, but no one wants to do. And in fact, it frustrates the hell out of most people. Addressing that frustration by modernizing and standardizing how payments work will both create huge disruptions in the traditional payments industry and trillions of dollars of new opportunity.
Thank you. And Devin, could you switch to the panel view? Thanks. Mike Banyard, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi. Unlike the other Mike, I am a self-confessed payments geek. I've spent about 30 years in payments in one guise or another. I'm a co-founder of Ordo. We're a UK-based fintech delivering request-to-pay capabilities across the UK and looking to expand into continental Europe in the last quarter of this year. We've been doing that for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was the head of development at the Faster Payments scheme here in the UK. So that Faster Payments is a body that runs the real-time clearing for the UK, where I helped led two major programs, one related to request to pay and the other around opening up access to the clearing system to smaller institutions. And before that, going back even further in time, I was at HSBC for about 25 years, predominantly in the product management and cash management space, where I led the HSBC program to implement faster payments back in the mid-2000s. And I've also got a long background of looking after PCH, RTGS, and international SWIFT payments and the like. The one bit of payments I've never touched is card, to my shame, and that's me. Apologies if you hear any background noise while I'm speaking. We've had 5 days of glorious weather here in the UK. Suddenly the heavens have opened. In the last 20 minutes, we've had the biggest storm we've had here for about 18 months, and it's still going on.
So Manish, you want to go next?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Manish Patel, and I'm the product manager here at Otimaco. Otimaco, as a company, we are an encryption house, and what we do is we specialize ourselves into hardware security modules. These guys are the encryption devices that basically power the payment ecosystem, something that you actually trust when you dip in your smart cards or your ATM cards into an ATM or at a point of sale, and it carries your transaction all the way back home to your acquirer or to your issuer and validates your payments, your methods of payments, the pins that you have entered are right or wrong, and provides the entire cryptography services. Been into the industry for almost 15 years now, and payments is all what I did.
Thank you. And Gautam, do you want to wrap it up in terms of the introduction?
Absolutely, Rod. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Rod, for the opportunity. So I think Manish and I kind of share a similar background. I'm Gautam Vij. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Phaeton US, and I've been with the company for 2 years, but I've been in the security domain for probably 25 years. Let me introduce quickly Phaeton. We are a company which breeds security. That's our backbone and our DNA. But we also have a very comprehensive portfolio of payment products, fintech products, and I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit about our angle of of this world. But we have been for business for like 25 years or so in both the security and the payment side. My background before joining Phaeton, I've had multiple gigs. I live in the Bay Area. I was employee number 2 for Dell Computers, reporting directly to Michael Dell. And as part of that, I helped acquire almost $8 billion, yes, billion, worth of M&A as well as organic growth. So from 2 employees, we took it to almost 7,000 employees in the Bay Area. I'm very proud of that. Before that, I worked for various other companies, including Microsoft, Oracle, where Oracle Identity Management, which is now probably $6-7 billion worth of revenue product. We started that whole business. Before that, I worked for Symantec and then McAfee. I've been there on the block. So I'm more of a software guy, but Phaeton is my first opportunity on the hardware side. Of course, Dell is a hardware company as well. And so I'm happy to be here, part of the panel. Thanks for the opportunity again.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for those intros. So let's start with the kind of the questions for the panel. Mike Siegel, what is the ISO 20022 messaging standard? And from a high level, kind of non-technical perspective, how is it different from 8583, which is used in the card industry?
Sure. So ISO 20022 is a modern, open, XML-based set of standards for all financial industry messages, including payments. It's designed to make payments more reliable, less expensive to manage, and ultimately more valuable for the entire payment value chain from payor to payee. It was originally introduced by SWIFT in 2004 as a way to modernize interbank transfers, but has been emerging as the most likely global standard for all payment messages. Now, while 8583 is card specific, ISO 20022 is interoperable across all types of payments and values of payments, including cards, ACH, high value, cross-border, and even a couple of cryptocurrencies.
Great. So what can be done with 20022 that can't be done with today's messaging technology, with 8583, for example?
Well, there's a long list, but let me start from this perspective. 8583 was created in the 80s, nearly 10 years before the web browser and Amazon and PayPal launched. It was an awesome way to process transactions in a world of expensive mainframes, dial-up connections that dropped a lot, and customers that expected business processes to be done from 8 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. 20022 conforms to modern computing conventions in a world where transactions travel over the public internet, where bandwidth and compute power and storage are increasingly cheap and reliable. And customers expect business processes to be fully automated between APIs in real time, 24/7, at less than what they're paying for current costs. So that's the context into which 20022 is introduced. And it has a couple of features that 8583 don't. The first one is that it structures data in a set of tagged fields that, like all modern coding conventions, are both human and machine readable, which makes it pretty easy to integrate and maintain regardless of the type of payment. More importantly, those machine readable tagged fields make it much easier to automate authentication and fraud and compliance and reconciliation, as well as generate useful analytics. So it provides a vehicle for automation and a vehicle for better customer service. Beyond that, it allows you to represent business processes in the messages itself. Whereas, 8583 takes care of initiation and authorization, 20022 can encapsulate validating payers and payees and intermediaries. It can get account statements, it can verify funds, it can dictate payment routing, it can check payment statuses, and it is the easiest way to implement request for payments. So all of that adds up to better customer experiences.
Great.
I've got one more, which is important,
Right.
which is the coolest feature to me is the ability to extend the remittance data or provide more context to the payment. And that could mean invoice data from an accounts payable system or payroll data from an ERP system or SKU level data associated with a card purchase. By adding that structured remittance data, what basically you're doing is putting the payment industry into the business process facilitation industry, which is ultimately what customers want. They don't want to do payments, they want to sell products and receive payments, and they want to automate their business as effectively as possible. So for folks in the payment industry, it's that extended remittance data that creates the opportunity for new business models, new products and services, new revenue.
Great, good. So Manish, to talk about quantum, could you tell us what is a quantum computer and why does it do different? What does it do differently than a standard computer? For example, the PCs that we all have, laptops that we all have, the servers that are in our offices, etc.
Absolutely. So think of a quantum computer as a Humvee and a classic computer like your car. The Humvee is meant for off-roading or doing things that your car typically cannot do. So a Humvee can certainly go faster where you can off-road. You can go straight where a car will have to go around. For many things, certainly a car is cheaper and faster, but the quantum computers on the flip side are designed for speed. It uses a phenomena in quantum physics and that creates a new ways of computing. A standard computer typically works on something called bits, which is holds a value of either 1 or 0. A quantum computer works on something called qubits or called quantum bits, and it can contain all possible values between 1 and 0. That way you can have multiple states, and that gives you the power that our current computers cannot even practically imagine. And they're also very power efficient. I just read or came across a report by Semiconductor Industry Association that by 2040, we will not have enough power to power all the machines around the world. And now that becomes one of the biggest reasons that why we need a computer that is faster and chews up less power. And that becomes precisely the reason why computer industry is also racing to make quantum computer works on a commercial scale so that we will get faster computers. And then it also helps us to look at the problems or to solve the problems at a faster pace, where we are looking at quite a lot of things like AI and so on, which needs computing and something that can be done faster. And this is where quantum computers comes into the picture.
So what does it mean? What does computer speed mean for today's encryption algorithms?
Well, that speed is, and it's not, when it comes to the encryption algorithms, it's not about just the speed, it's also about a different type of computing. We talk about, when it comes to encryptions, there are typically two different types of algorithms, as we all know. We have symmetric cryptography, and then we have asymmetric cryptography. The symmetric ones, where we talk about typical algorithms like AES, for example, which is a standard. AES algorithms do pretty well as far as we have seen when it comes to the attacks against quantum, because quantum computers has got a problem with its scaling and with its quantum circuits and so on. Whereas on the flip side, when we talk about the public key algorithms, public key cryptography, algorithms like RSA or Diffie-Hellman or elliptic curve cryptography, they become very weak. And that being precisely the reason why quantum computers are faster, and that way help to help us with the quantum and encryption algorithms is coming in.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I guess just as a quick follow-up, does the payment industry need to do anything in the next couple of years to minimize the chance of the encryption algorithms being hacked by folks who have quantum computers?
Sure. So payment industry as it stands is divided in two different pieces. As we said, we have symmetric crypto and we have asymmetric crypto. For most of the times, symmetric crypto is the backbone. And I personally don't think that symmetric crypto will be immediately impacted. Today, we talk about crypto agility, where the intention is to be crypto agile. The intention is to be being able to update or change the encryption algorithms on the fly. All of us know that it is not something that is going to happen, or is not as simple as it sounds. So a few things that I would do is first and foremost, again, taking a step back, we are talking about payments. So we cannot spell payments without DES, or even single DES as it stands today. And certainly I would get rid of a single DES. I use it as an opportunity to get rid of single DES and upgrade to AES, preferably to AES 256, wherever possible, wherever supported, number one. Number two is I would understand my system and understand where and what kind of cryptography is being used, what kind of key sizes am I using, and understand if those things can be upgraded or not. I mean, thinking about point of sale, thinking about ATMs, those things, it is not very easy for them to upgrade the encryption algorithms and so on. So that is another thing. Number two is, even though I said that symmetric algorithms are not typically impacted or not immediately impacted, I would say, by quantum computing, but it is very important to understand that today, to exchange those symmetric keys, what we use is asymmetric algorithms like RSA, like elliptic curve, and so on. So the moment we see that the asymmetric algorithms are compromised, we should be ready like no tomorrow to change all of those symmetric keys that are in play as well, because the moment asymmetric channels, the tunnels that we dig in, are compromised, the keys that are flowing inside that tunnel will be considered compromised at the same time. So it will be very important for us to be prepared for that. And last but not the least is expect chaos. I mean, looking at the payment industry, when we look at AES, it was approved back in 2021. And here we are, sorry, back in 2001. And here we are in 2021, and we are now talking about moving away from triple DES and adapting AES. So nothing in the payment industry moves faster, but these are a few things that I would start with, to keep myself protected, or at least prepare for the inevitable.
Thanks a lot. So let's go to Mike Banyard. Mike, can you tell us about the faster payment solution in the UK and on the continent, and give us a sense of how long these systems have been in place.
Yeah, thanks. So I think the UK was probably the first country globally to launch a real-time 24/7 faster payment or real-time payment capability back in May 2008, when I didn't have quite as much grey hair. And over the last 14 years, faster payments has grown both in terms of the number of banks connected into it. We've gone from the 11 largest banks through to, I think it's about 35 at the last count of the institutions, which doesn't sound a huge amount compared to the US market, but that accounts for about 98% of all checking account holders in the UK will bank with one of those 35 banks. Faster payments in the UK is now handling on average 9 million transactions a day, and with a daily value of about 8.5 billion US per day going through. Continental Europe's been few years behind. I think there have been a few national schemes around for the last 8 or 9 years, but really the big drive has been over the last 4 years since the launch of the SEPA instant credit service. So it's been around for about 4 years. That handles currently about 900,000 transactions a day with an average daily value of about €500 million, so about 600 million US a day. I think it's taking time to take off, mainly because I think a lot of banks across Europe and globally don't have the real-time 24/7 internal systems to support the nature of these systems. And I think the fact that you haven't got ubiquity across all the banks in various countries in Europe means it's hard for customers to use, because they can't always get a payment there instantly. Sometimes it'll be there next day or even 2 days later, which is not great if you're trying to do something rapidly.
Right. So Mike, my understanding is that all of these systems are credit push, and they all have irrevocable transactions. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are all credit push or push credit systems. And again, in terms of settlement, at the point in which the payment goes through and has been accepted by the receiving bank, it is considered irrevocable. Now that I could speak primarily for the UK in that model, and the rationale for that is it was a requirement from the Bank of England, so the equivalent to the Federal Reserve for the UK. They wanted to be in a position where at the point of payment had been processed, it was irrevocable, could not be challenged, could not be returned or unwound. Because I think probably because back in 2008, the Bank of England had a real concern about banks failing. As we saw in 2008 through to about 2010-11, banks did fail. And what they wanted to do was make sure that in the event of a bank failing and not being able to cover its position across the piece, or at least its retail payments would be clean and it was completely clean and clear to every participant, be it the sender or the recipient, whose money it was at the point in which that bank failed. And that's now effectively become enshrined in terms of it's a red line that the payment schemes could never cross now. The Bank of England expect irrevocability on these payments.
Great, thanks for that. Gautam, can you tell us about MPOS and describe an MPOS terminal? Gautam, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me, Rob?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so MPOS, it's a very simple device. Think of MPOS as a smartphone or a tablet or any device, which runs a mobile OS, can accept mobile payments. Typically, these apps that are on the MPOS are secure, they're securely signed, and it allows the ability to be able to manage these, both the hardware as well as the firmware and the software on the device. So think of TMS, which is terminal management system, or think of MDM, which is the device management, mobile device management. So the paradigm shift is that we focus away from a hardware, so basically hardware agnostic, to the focus becomes the software, right? So the focus is everything around the software, making it functional, making it secure, and all of that. And the best news is there's no bulky, POS systems. There are a lot of advantages to that. We can obviously discuss that. But I would say the biggest thing is you can go anywhere. They're wireless. They're nimble. So, think about like your mobile phone being able to accept payments. That's what I would call an MPOS in a layman terms.
What are some other use cases of an MPOS terminal, and what are the benefits of using an MPOS terminal versus a kind of a standard terminal?
I would say there are a lot of benefits. I would start with security, right? So definitely the MPOS terminals are more secure because they're based on a more, I would say, modern architecture, more secure architecture. Obviously secure Android. We talked about TMS and MDM, being able to do, device management, which basically means your software is always up to date. You have patch management, but it also allows monitoring, right? So you could have partners, VARs, or technology partners that are monitoring your stack, they're monitoring your transactions, and they're monitoring, governance and regulatory compliance rules. And anytime your system is out of compliance, they can update that system and remediate that system to make sure that it is in compliance, whether it's PCI or whatever else compliance you follow. So think of it, it's like always latest, always up to date, it's always being monitored, there's always analysis around it. But other than that, in terms of, comparing, pros and cons, there are a lot of benefits, and I can go into more detail, but, just from a high level, like easy to set up, easy to train your Gen A, which is the typical, 20-year-old working at the store, or non-tech savvy. Again, no bulky equipment. The cost is much cheaper, which basically means you can scale up. So think of Thanksgiving, no more lines, because you can hire temp staff and be able to hand these out. There are other advantages around MDM, which is master data management, meaning you can update your inventory into your POS system, into your MPOS system. And there are a lot of advantages we can talk about, better customer experience, better flow, more personalization. So the customer has a better personalized shopping experience, so you can cross-sell, upsell. There's loyalty program that can build in, redeem points, earn points, like something like Starbucks. And then there's something called geolocation. Again, we can talk about more about that, but the ability to go into a store and be recommended something that is nearby you, which you would have never seen, something behind the aisle. It says, oh, you're buying this. By the way, did you consider this particular item, which is on sale or based on your last, buying whatever it is? It's the typical Amazon style, like, are you sure you want to buy this? And how about these things, So it allows you to do that based on geolocation as well. And then things like digital coupons, physical coupons, loyalty, being able to scan them with QR code, which I know is a big thing. Based on the poll that we had yesterday, QR reading and scanning is like one of the big hottest items. But I would say the biggest of these, all of these, would be the contactless payment with NFC and mobile wallet, right? The post-COVID era, I don't want anybody to touch my card, and if they do, I have to disinfect it 100 times. I don't want that, and I'd rather have a mobile, wallet where I don't have to carry a card, right? Everything is through my watch, and that's it. Why do I have to carry a physical card when the same transaction can happen digitally? So I think that's the feature, and MPOS allows it. And then security, and we covered it. We can go into, there's so many advantages, MDM, we can talk more about that, but being able to look at your transactions, being able to analyze the transactions with AI and analytics, and being able to find gaps and opportunities in your sales pattern in real time. And that's where the power is. It's not a legacy application where you have to, create the data. It's like happening in real time. So you can analyze, the marketing team can analyze in real time the trends and, shopping patterns and like change promotions and everything else. And that's tied into your back end. So you don't have to keep an ad on if things is sold out. I mean, that's the most frustrating thing. Consumer buys on something, it says sold out. Why show that ad if it's not available anymore? So, they're like infinite, opportunities and capabilities that a POS system cannot give you.
Great, thanks a lot. Let's go back to Mike Banyard for a moment. And Mike, can you talk about what a request to pay transaction is? And following telling us what request to pay is, tell us a little bit about what's happening in Europe with the request to pay transaction going to the point of sale.
Yeah, sure. I think request to pay is a way, certainly what my take on it, it's a way for bank-to-bank transfers or account-to-account transfers to be done in a more secure, digitized fashion. So I think one of the big downsides with traditional push payments, such as faster payments, is that it relies upon the sender of that payment knowing all the account and routing, or routing, I guess is the right language to use, routing details of the recipient, that's open to error. It's open to fraud. It's very easy to mistype the details and have your money fly off to the wrong person. What Request to Pay does, it takes that burden away from the payer of the transaction, and it means the recipient of the payment is creating the transaction so they can make sure all the routing information is correct. The reference data, Mike Siegel touched on data and reconciliation and everything. If you as the recipient of that payment can put the reference that means something to you, embed that within that transaction, that means you're going to get a much better reconciliation than you get if you're relying on your end customer to quote the right information. And I think Request to Pay services are operating effectively as an overlay to the account-to-account payment rails. So they're completely independent of those rails, so that innovation and new enhancements can be brought in without touching the payment rails. But they leverage the power and the speed of those rails to deliver a real-time experience. So let's take a point of sale scenario, maybe not your Starbucks high turnover type environment, but more a consultative retailer. So someone's buying furniture or a new automobile or something of that ilk. Then you can the retailer could very easily create in real time a transaction, present it to the customer, potentially through an MPOS terminal as a QR code. All the end customer needs to do, scan that QR code, authenticate using their banking app and the biometric authentication within the banking app to make a real-time payment. So within seconds, the payment is through. The merchant knows that they've received the money, and they receive that money on 100% of the value, no deductions, so unlike other mechanisms. So it's an opportunity to reduce fraud, improve reconciliation, and eliminate a lot of the percentage costs and other fees and all the PCI compliance issues that sit in the card space. So we believe it will be transformative in the coming years, and probably see as a minimum a doubling of transactions through the real-time payment rails. In terms of Europe and UK as well, I'll include the UK in that despite Brexit, there's now a legal framework that creates a more open playing field. It allows fintechs such as Ordo to offer these services and to be able to access the bank accounts of the merchants and the consumers. And it's been something that's been brought in by the regulatory authorities across Europe to try to move the balance of power away from the big financial institutions and open that up to have a more competitive environment. In Europe, the EBA are looking at a very similar scheme to what's developing and emerging in the UK, and certainly our plans in terms of moving into mainland Europe are predicated on that new capability being developed. And the reason we concentrate on the UK, partly because it's our home country, but also because the UK market, in terms of the bank's readiness to support and interoperate with with fintechs such as Ordo, the UK is probably 18 to 24 months ahead of continental Europe when it comes to that technology play.
So Mike, my understanding about Request to Pay is if I want to be paid, in order for me not to expose my credentials, I can send you a message across the faster payment system that has my credentials embedded into it, and just saying in US terms, please pay me $100. And then the recipient of that then can click on it, not tell me what their credentials are, and then push a button and they'll instantly pay me the $100, and neither side needs to know the other side's credentials.
Almost right. The one bit that's different is when you're wanting to receive the money, you would do that through a fintech firm like Ordo. You wouldn't do that, and that message goes outside of the faster payment rails. So it uses technology, uses APIs and the open banking technology to deliver that. So effectively, you would provide either a QR code or a short URL link to the person that needs to pay you.
Right.
When they click that link, that redirects them straight to their bank, where they authenticate themselves and authorize their bank to debit their account and move the money straight through the faster payment rails. So the settlement, clearing and settlement of the payment is done through faster payments, but the initiation is done outside of that.
That's interesting. That's interesting to the way it's done in the UK. And my guess is Zelle does it quite the same way in the US. I'm not sure how RTP at the clearinghouse and how the Fed's going to do it, because they're both talking about doing request to pay across their rails. But anyway,
my understanding is that in the US with Zelle and Venmo, it's happening on their own rails, right? In those P2P implementations. If you think about, there's a pseudo request to pay functionality in invoicing tools like QuickBooks, where if I charge you for something, I send you an invoice and I can embed a click to pay here button, which then allows you to either input a credit card or your bank credentials in order to send me the payment over those rails.
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding, Mike. And I think when it comes to how that link is presented to the payer of the transaction, that could be through email, SMS, even through sort of messaging apps like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, turned into a QR code, or even as a pay now button with an e-commerce checkout experience. We, as Auto, we've implemented all of those different mechanisms over the last 12 months and seeing huge take up. And again, and it's not just the traditional big utility businesses that are doing this. This is across the board. It's firms with call centers. They have their staff initiating requests, and even a chatbot in one instance initiating the requests to the payer. In every instance, it's avoiding any exchange of account details. You're not having to give, as a consumer, you're not having to read out your card number to somebody, some random person in a call center. It is really powerful from a data privacy perspective.
Yeah,
right.
And I think the other thing to say about it is that from a merchant perspective, the cost for the transaction is substantially less than a card transaction.
So again, it's not appropriate to talk pricing here, but what I can say is you're talking low double-digit cents per message, per transaction, without any percentage deductions or any of the other stuff that goes with associated with the cards world. So we're talking to an energy firm at the moment. They reckon they can save on customers who are paying monthly, they can save themselves around $20 per customer per year, which doesn't sound like a huge amount of money. Multiply that by 5 million customers, you've got a material cost saving that's really going to impact your bottom line as a business.
Yep. So let's switch back to ISO 20022 in kind of the remaining moments, and just talk about where is 20022 implemented today, and how does it support straight-through processing?
Not much in that question. So 20022 is live in some form in something like 70 markets globally and is being implemented by somewhere on the order of 200 market infrastructures globally. The drivers at the moment are the impending deadlines from either SWIFT or regulators on one side, or multinationals who want to unify how they deal with payments globally. That said, it's dragging not just the banks in, but financial management vendors and ERP vendors and payment solution vendors. In the US, 20022 underlies the clearinghouse, which happens to be built on MasterCard's VocaLink product and the upcoming FedNow product from the Fed. In terms of straight through processing, think of it as 3 layers. What happens, for the payment networks and banks, what happens between the payors and their banks, and then the full end-to-end system. Inside of the banks or the payment networks, that structured and enhanced data that we talked about is what allows for creating automation in all of the processes. When it comes time to thinking about the corporate payer, basically when they're able to send enriched payment data to the bank and get a confirmation back in ISO 20022, their experience is now straight through processing. That, for example, is one of the benefits that ADP gets by using ISO 20022 to initiate 3.5 million payments twice a week in 140 countries or something like this. Then the third layer is, if you imagine from the payor, there's invoice data that travels with the payment and gets to the payee, and that is used to update the accounts receivable system and the treasury management system. Now you have end-to-end automation straight through processing.
That for our audience, I think that's an important point to think about. That you can have essentially AR systems, accounts payable systems, talking to the payment system, which then talks to the accounts receivable system, and you press a button and the payment goes all the way through, and it's posted. It's debited on one side, posted on the other. Your GLs on both sides are posted, and everything happens in real time without any manual intervention.
I'll even take that to another layer. Tableau, which is the big data analytics company that's owned by Salesforce, they implemented paying out in ISO 20022 globally, and their payment systems connect to the treasury management systems so that they can keep a near real-time updated view on working capital.
Yep, that's certainly some of the benefits. Let me switch. I didn't see any questions in the chat. So in our remaining couple of minutes, let me switch to Quantum and Manish and just talk about some of the places that Quantum can work outside encryption, things like AI and data management or data analysis and so on.
Right. Well, when it comes to that, there are quite a few things where it is already being used, like molecular and financial modeling, weather forecasting, flight scheduling. Then obviously AI is another bit. These all pieces certainly are being used. IBM's version is out where there is a limit obviously on what you can do, but they are using it. Even Google claims that they're already using Quantum to improve the software of their self-driving cars. There are quite a few things. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, okay. So there are quite a few things where we see it. And again, I wouldn't say that Quantum is designed to break crypto. That's not what the intention is. The intention is to create a super fast and a super powerful computer. But obviously, there are always going to be a usage and misusage of the technology, and breaking the encryption happens to be one of those.
Great. So let me just ask the audience if there are any questions. So far, there are none in the chat. But if there are, if someone puts them in, we've got about a minute or two left. So I don't see any yet. While we wait, let's go to Gautam and MPOS and talk about the idea of geofencing for MPOS applications.
Absolutely. I think geofencing is probably one of the most radical features of MPOS systems. We talked about geofencing before, but geofencing allows you to be able to determine the location of the MPOS, and based on that, you can do so many different sophisticated strategies. For example, product recommendations is a total radical shift, which is, I would think, even better than an online experience. So think of like a shopper that is, working through the aisles, of the store, and the shopper has a loyalty program, and the shopper has an account with the retailer, and so the retailer is kind of learning about the shopper, behaviors, buying behaviors, putting stuff in their cart and then abandoning, whatever it is. So they're learning using AI and analytics what the customer likes and their preferences and stuff like that. And when they're walking through the aisles, there's an ability to geolocate them where they are and be able to upsell and cross-sell other things. For example, they bought something, but they forgot an accessory, and so if the accessory happens to be on deal, and they could say, by the way, you bought this, let's say grill. They bought a grill and say, hey, this cover for the grill is available 50% off. Would you be interested? Things like that. They can be personalized ads, so more like a virtual shopping companion, which is like explores the experience that with the shopper has. And in this age and era when people are now moving towards online, this can really help retailers be able to compete for that mind share, being able to walk in with that MPOS system and have that virtual shopping experience, what's available for discount and stuff like that. There's so many opportunities. And then security is obviously the backbone, right? Being able to geofence, employee location, being able to block certain payments because they're not in that, they're not in the fence, if you may. And then there are other use cases where the GPS technology allows you to add many more layers of sophisticated business applications. Think of FedEx, UPS, and all these, when they're delivering packages, they have the MPOS, they're scanning, which puts a timestamp, location stamp, and that they've delivered. But now take that into, let's say, trucking business where they are delivering other things or they're collecting stuff. So there are a lot of use cases where this can be like very, very useful.
Great,
I
thank
can
you.
go on and on.
Yeah, sure. We are unfortunately at the top of the hour, so to speak. Certainly and the time the session should end. So I want to thank all the panelists for participating and all the time that you put in. And I will turn it back to Jason. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Excellent job today. Very well articulated. Thanks for the visions into the future. We are due for a break at this stage, guys. We're going to take a break to 4:15 Eastern time, and then we'll come back. We'll have our Birds of a Feather session focused around buy now, pay later, which will be led by Joe Vasterling and Eric O'Brien. So look forward to seeing everybody here in a couple of minutes. Thank you again, guys.
Take care. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.